This is Cooking at Kaleo. I'm so excited to teach you guys how to make my all-time favorite dessert, homemade chocolate chip cookies. Let me tell you about the ingredients. So tonight we're gonna use 2 kinds of sugars, white sugar and brown sugar, 2 kinds of butters, regular salted sweet cream butter, and Crisco butter flavored baking sticks. You're just gonna use half of this, but this is the key to the cookies that are the perfect texture, and this is the key to the cookies that are the perfect flavor. So we're using 2 butters. We're using 2 eggs and some vanilla extract, and then some salt, baking powder, all-purpose flour, and the star, a whole bag of semi-sweet chocolate chips. The first step is just to preheat your oven to 375, and next we're gonna beat our 2 types of butter together to get them just nice and fluffy. I'm using room temperature ingredients today. It's best to use room temperature ingredients for baking. It just helps everything mix together a little bit easy. So if you don't have room temperature butter yet, just put it in the microwave for about 10 seconds and then flip it and put it in for maybe another 5 seconds until it gets nice and soft. And then just put it in your biggest bowl and beat them up together. Beat them for about a minute until both butters are combined and kind of fluffy. I just mixed the butters together until they're nice and combined and a little bit fluffy, and then I added 3/4 cup brown sugar, 3/4 cups white sugar, and a teaspoon of vanilla to the butter mixture, and I'm gonna mix those up until they're nice and combined. This is a chemistry lesson, y'all. This is called creaming the butter and sugar together. That's what we're doing, and the sugar will go into the butter and make little air pockets, and that makes your cookies fluffy, so you don't wanna miss this step. So go ahead and just mix it up for about a minute. I've been mixing up my butter and sugar mixture, and I just noticed that there's a little bit of butter just on the sides of my bowl still, and so I just want to scrape down the sides, make sure all the butter gets incorporated into the sugar, and then remix it. My sugar and butter are mixed very well together, and next it's time to add our eggs. So we're gonna add 2 eggs, but we're gonna do them one at a time and mix well in between. Eggs are a cool ingredient. They're called an emulsifier, and they just help things that don't normally go together bind together. So normally sugar and butter don't like to stick together, but the egg helps them bind, so it keeps your cookies together. It also makes them a little bit fluffy. That's why we mix in between each addition of eggs. So I added my egg, I'm gonna mix it for about a minute, and then I'll add the other one, mix that for about a minute. Our sugar butter mixture got nice and fluffy from those eggs. That's kind of what it's supposed to look like. Okay, next we are going to mix together our dry ingredients. So I went ahead and put 2 1/4 cups of flour in this measuring cup, and then I'm gonna add to that a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of baking powder. Sorry, baking soda, not powder. Baking soda is what we use in this recipe. And then you wanna mix your flour with your baking soda and salt before adding it to your batter, because you don't want like a chunk of baking soda to get stuck in one part of your cookies and not get all throughout. The baking soda is a cool ingredient. It helps the cookies rise. It's called a leavening agent, and the salt just makes them taste yummy. My baking soda and salt are all mixed into my flour mixture. I'm just gonna add half of it to our batter and then stir it with a spatula or a spoon just until that's kind of combined. It's important not to overmix any kind of baking goods that have flour in them, because whenever flour hits moisture, it activates the gluten in the flour, and the gluten kind of acts like glue. And if it's overly mixed, it will make your cookies kind of dense and hard. But if you just mix it by hand gently till it's just combined, they'll be nice and fluffy and soft still and not too hard or dense. Next, we're gonna stir in our chocolate chips. I don't actually use the full bag. I kind of leave a little bit in the bag just because I don't like them so chocolate chippy. And you just want to fold these in by hand too, just with your spoon or spatula. Don't overmix, just until they're all incorporated throughout the dough. And then you have a couple of options here. If you don't need these right away, you can chill the dough overnight. That really helps the texture. If you don't have time to do that, it's okay. I have a little cheater method. I go ahead and roll them into balls and put them on my cookie sheet, and then I just pop them in the freezer for about 10 minutes before putting them in the oven. It's best to use parchment paper, but I just ran out, so I'm gonna put these straight on the pan, but they might stick a little bit. So if you have parchment paper, line your pan with parchment paper. It's time to get our cookie dough onto our pan. So I'm using just a tablespoon scoop and just dropping them straight onto the pan, and then I will roll them into perfect balls, and then put them in the freezer for 10 minutes before putting them in my 375 oven. The reason it's important to chill the dough is just to kind of let everything get incorporated, but also to get the butter back a little bit hard so that when they cook, the butter doesn't turn to liquid fast and spread the cookies all out. So this is really important for your cookies to stay fluffy and not spread all over your pan and kind of make one big sheet of cookies instead of little individual ones. The cookies are out of the oven and they smell so good and they're perfectly cooked. Mine cooked for 10 minutes, but I started checking them at 7 because all ovens are different, so you just never know. You know when they're done when they just start getting a tiny bit brown and the edges kind of crackle. I hope you guys love these homemade chocolate chip cookies, and we'll see you next time on Cooking at Kaleo.